Welcome to the RevOps Loop podcast with Maarten and Stjepan, brought to you by Digital Reach and the nonprofit tech shop. Get ready to learn about revenue operations, HubSpot, and beer.
Hey guys, so here we are, episode 3 already. Things are moving quick. Our topic of the day: what are key components of a clean, scalable contact management strategy? So we'll dive into that a bit more, kind of lay out what some of the different angles and factors are into setting up a clean and scalable contact management strategy. We'll also then dig into some tools and features, some underrated ones, some underused ones, some overhyped ones as well that we can review, and then obviously we'll close things off with a quick beer review as always. So with that said, let's dig right into it. How do we go about setting up a clean and scalable contact management strategy? And perhaps just to frame the conversation a bit, and Stjepan, for this I'll kick it over to you. What would be some of the main factors that go into, like, what are the main components, I guess, in your opinion, of a scalable and a clean contact management strategy? What are the key components?
Yeah, so there are a couple of ways we can do it, and a couple of ways to think about it. But I like to think it like 4 pillars that if you get right, you are achieving clean contact management. So first is define your data model. So not every business has the same data model. So try to define, and we'll talk more about it, like how to define it, how to think about it. Then map everything out and try to standardize and enforce data entry for the end user, for your teams. Then setting everything up, once you have it mapped, once you have it visualized, once everybody agrees, set it up in your CRM in a way that makes sense. It's not complicated. Even if it's so, try to not make it complicated. And then build something that will keep you in line with the data hygiene that you want to accomplish, and that will help you preserve clean data. And when I think about that, that's usually dashboards, views, and regular review of the data, and who is owning that piece of data. That can be different inputs from different integrations, like custom, native, maybe imports, but making sure. So we will touch base on all 4 of them, and I want to kick off with the first one. So that's like how somebody starting, let's say they're new, they're appointed to gather all the information and try to define data model. How would you help them unlock that? How to think about it? Or to you, Maarten?
Yeah, the data model piece. So that's an important one indeed, right? So before you're able to go about and set up your more down the funnel strategy of managing contacts, etc., is just clearly identifying what a contact is to you. It sounds simple, but what I mean by that is you could have, depending on your organization, you could have different types of contacts, right? So that first and foremost, right, and make sure that is accounted for, and whether it's through separate objects, and maybe not everything needs to be a contact object, so you need custom objects, etc. Or you just need, contact types or something that can easily label contacts across your CRM. But perhaps more importantly is, and this is more the data model piece of it, is how do these contacts then fit into your larger CRM? Like, how are they associated with other objects, with companies? Can one contact be associated with multiple organizations, multiple deals, tickets? Can they be associated with other contacts? And if so, are there different types of association labels, right? So that's, I think, before you get into, creating your life cycle stages and your properties, etc., that's what you'll want to have very clearly visualized beforehand, right? The reason for that is that'll help you guide where data should live, right? So we've seen CRMs, I'm sure you've seen them as well, where there's data that's living on a contact record, and then when you dig into it, it's like, hey, this is actually a company thing, or this should be a deal record, and it should pass through to associated contacts as opposed to the other way around. So having that initial visualization of where do your contacts, and all your other objects for that matter, where do they fit into the larger data model, that kind of helps guide what the source of truth is for each data point. Just to wrap that point up with an example would be, we work with a lot of organizations that use household objects. So obviously multiple contacts can be in one household object, right? These are custom objects. This is a clear example where some things need to live on household objects and some need to live on contact objects when it comes to your address, for example. Everyone who's associated to that household, that should be, that address should live on the household and then be passed through to the contact. Unless a contact moves away from the household, then that association needs to change and they need to have a new household with a new address be set up, etc. Like that's a way to or an example of first needing to map out and say, where does data need to live before you go about setting anything up. Yeah.
Yeah, I will just like add to what you were saying is trying to define a data model. Maybe start with asking, like, are you B2B, B2C, both? Like, who are you serving?
Yeah.
Like, what are, like you mentioned the types, like who are you serving? Is it just you're selling into like one key person, or there are multiple? How do you call it? How is your team calling them? And then you mentioned labels, like is there anything that you can add to that individual that will help anybody from the team? So I think thinking also in those terms, but overall, trying to be as detailed as you can, and you can always later remove a certain like piece of the puzzle if you think it's unnecessary. But defining should be something that's like a 1 2 hour 3 hour process, and trying to get as much as the data there. How do you define a contact? What is a contact? How it gets associated, and when? I think it's very important when they are associated. So if you're B2B, usually it will be auto-associated with a company by a domain name. CRMs can do that, HubSpot does that. But if you're like B2C, probably they shouldn't be associated if they have a Gmail or any other free domain, because that can be a mess in your CRM. So trying to understand that. And then if you're selling into different departments in one company, getting clear understanding what the data model is there. So if there's a life cycle that needs to move on everybody associated with the company or just an individual person. And that's where we are thinking about on our next pillar, and that's like standardizing and enforcing data entry. So on
that one, maybe just like a last example of it, because you bring up a good point where we have clients as well that work with primarily global enterprise companies, right? And then the way they would typically then sell to these companies, again, depends organization per organization, is per business unit or per regional team, et cetera. And so the way their CRM is set up is they'll have parents, companies, and then associated teams or business units, right? And then contacts would be associated to those teams and business units, not the companies. And so if you don't have that mapped out initially, what could end up happening is, hey, you sell to the Belgian Microsoft department. Okay, great. Microsoft becomes a client. All of a sudden in your CRM, everyone related to Microsoft is now considered a customer when they shouldn't be, right? And so that's, I think, a good example of where if you don't have that initial data model set up, it can lead to those kind of misconceptions, which, you need to have figured out first before you can go to the next step, which you outlined, like kind of the second key point of once you have that model, standardizing and enforcing data entry, right? So now we know where the data needs to live, how it needs to be moved through, etc. Next step is making sure that it comes in and gets enforced the right way, right? So I don't know if you have any initial examples, tips on how to go about doing that, but I think that's the logical second part in setting up this clean contact management strategy.
Yeah, so when I think about standardizing and enforcing data entry, usually we love HubSpot, so we can talk more about like how HubSpot does it. But I'm thinking like, what do you want at the end to report on? And because clearly not every type of field and data entry is the same and can be used by CRM correctly. So if you're thinking about, I want to report on a single line text, that's usually not the way to do it. So then when you map out and define your data model, and you know the point of entry, and you know maybe you have a couple of integrations, you need to clearly identify how the data is syncing, what are the field types, can it be done bidirectionally, one directionally, and then try to enforce as much as you can that the data is correctly entering the CRM. So what I like to do is do like a reverse demo, like when the data will hit the CRM. So it can be live in another system, but like when the data hits the CRM, does it need to be converted in some other form, in which properties it's living, and then on what object. So we are talking about contact management, but we are also touching base on company and other things. So you need to define that, and that I think is like standardizing and enforcing data entry. So using drop downs, radio selects instead of those free text fields for like key properties that can be like source, campaign types, donor types for nonprofits, and then one thing that HubSpot does pretty good as a CRM, when you are creating those properties, let's say you're starting from fresh, you can set property validation rules. So you can have number of digits for a specific phone number, country, even email, like block free email domain. If you're not working with anybody that is a customer that has a free email domain, you should block those in your forms. Like, don't show that. They cannot submit a form if they don't have a custom domain, like a paid domain. And then the same is for, like, for example, I would say a HIPAA compliant data that HubSpot has in a enterprise tier is like how many digits you need to collect on I don't know, personal identification number. So like the data is not scattered around, and you can easily trust the data because and you can talk more about that because I know you do that in your role in marketing ops, is like how that then data can be easily used across different tools. For example, a simple workflow that is like, okay, we have phone numbers, let's use tools like HubSpot SMS or any other SMS tool for like bulk enrollment where we can send messages, nurture, and do stuff. So what do you think about standardizing data on your end?
No, I mean, I agree. I think you touched on two things, right? So one is on getting make sure that the data that does come in is clean. I guess there's different ways you can go about it. One is automating it to be formatted in a certain way. I think with things like phone numbers, it's pretty straightforward. Most CRMs have a way where you can put in a number with or without a country code, and based on, or with or without spacing or dashes, and it'll clean it up and make sure that it's in the right format. Great. Usually you can just rely on some automations there to make sure it's structured, which, to your point, is important because depending on what you're going to do with that data, let's say you're using these phone numbers to push contact lists to ad platforms, it's important that they're all following the same structure, right? Like the platform where you push that list into might have difficulties if the formats are a bit all over the place. So that one is important as well. The other way you could go about doing that, I guess more of the manual way, is more setting up restrictions, right? So if someone is filling out what's the most typical one? If someone is filling out a last name, it can't contain any special characters, right? It's a typical one I think we'll see anywhere. But you can get a little bit more granular on that, where it's just a preventative mechanism, I guess you could say, of getting incomplete or wrong data into the wrong types of properties, right? One thing that we'll typically do for addresses, for example, is we'll have address fields broken down at least into 3-4 separate fields. So there's, again, address line, zip code, building number, etc. And then not allow a full address to just be pasted in the first one. So if we identify a number in the address line where it shouldn't be, you'll get an error message. Whoever's filling that out knows they need to fill it out. You have to be careful with that. You don't want to, you want to make sure things stay user friendly. But what I'm just trying to point out is, you could go both ways, where it's, guys, just fill in the data and we set up an automation to clean it up. You can do that with some properties. Or if you need to guard against it a bit more, or the data is a bit more particular and it's like an address, or like, what would be another example? I don't know, feedback, so like structured feedback surveys, for example, where you can say, nope, you can put information in there, but we're restricting how it gets set up. So this is how you would set it up on an individual property level. But yeah, I think both of those are key. So especially once you've established what your most important data points are, protecting them, either through automated cleanup or through restrictions and rules that you set up. Yep.
Yeah, and I love that, because like when I'm thinking about setting up standardization, I'm thinking about like the end user that needs to set it up. Usually that's an admin or a group of people. So like from that part, I think just making sure that they provide like a simple input to other people using the CRM, like why this data needs to stay clean. What are the issues down the line if we are not doing this correctly? And usually when you do that, you do two things. Everybody's clear on why, and the second is like nobody is second guessing like how you did the integration, why the data is flowing that way, and then you can use that data to easily surface whatever they need and for each of the teams. So and then the other thing is like if you have multiple teams, you mentioned like you're working with enterprise companies, like if you have multiple teams, like when I train people, like some of the, let's say, sales reps, they like to work from the deal level, and some of them work from the company level, some of them even just like do like have a contact list that they work from. So that's very important when you're setting up the data model and standardizing the data entry, because you need to let them know where the data will live, but also ask them so that the way, like if we are collecting first something on the contact level, but let's say my 5 top sales reps are working from the company level, do they want to have that data passed to the company or the deal level, and when? So I think that's also very important. We can now build sync properties, so it's very easy. You don't need to do like those messy workflows we did a couple of like a year or two ago. Like now you can just build sync properties and it will sync immediately when it's known on a different object. So I think that's very good as a new feature from HubSpot. And yeah, but like when somebody is creating those properties and they're building those fields, and let's say we are now at our like the third pillar, how to set up that data. Like I usually hear about people like what's a good naming convention, and then also like when I build something on my own, I do always property groups, but I see so many CRMs that don't even have a property group. It's like everything is just a property by itself. You don't know why it's created. You don't know. You only know who created it. So like, can you tell me more about
that? And that works if you have 50, 60 properties and you can scroll through it in 2 or 3 clicks. But once you hit the couple hundreds, that becomes an absolute mess. Yeah. And that's when like
how would you think about the naming convention? Sorry, how do you think
the naming convention? I think it's a detail, but it's an important one, right? I think if you have the first 2 steps, right, your data model clear, your restrictions clear, then the next part of it, indeed, in your CRM, whatever naming convention you land on, I also don't think it's a huge deal. For me, more importantly, are the properties grouped together, like you mentioned, these property groups that make sense, right? And so there's the default ones typically, and again, talking HubSpot, but most CRMs have a similar kind of setup where it's on a contact record, you'll have contact information, which obviously just includes all the core contact information, and then you'll have additional groups like company information, which pulls in information from the associated company to that contact. Okay, great. But then you can add additional ones, right? So let's say you have a webinar course that you're pushing, and you're collecting data for that as well. How many webinars they attended, their completion rate, their scores, all of that. making sure that there is then a property group called webinar course. And as you're adding in more properties, make sure they're all added there. It just makes it easier to find. And then again, land on a simple naming convention. What are the typical ones? We'll see the object name, right? This is contact, then perhaps the category, right? So that would be webinar course, and then the actual data that's inside it. And then use the property descriptions as well to describe what's in it. Again, you'll thank yourself later for doing that afterwards. But I think grouping the properties together is actually the biggest thing there. Because what that prevents, and that kind of ties directly into our fourth point, the whole data hygiene side of things. How do you get a clean contact management system and keep it clean? If you have those set up, what you'll prevent is the typical thing that happens: duplicate properties all over the place. You mentioned it earlier, right? Different teams can work out of different objects from time to time, and that's perfectly fine. But if they're A, unrestricted in what they can access and what they can edit, and B, they don't have good visibility on where existing properties live, like through clear property groups, they're going to start adding things in there, right? And so they might start adding a new property on a company level that shows the feedback survey results that also live on a contact record. And then the team that's working on company records, they're feeding in the information on one property. The marketing team might be doing it on another one. And no one knows that of each other because they're both just looking at different properties. They're creating reports on different properties. And all of a sudden your database is split. So to prevent that, the property groups help. To enforce that, and this is kind of, preventing is always better than fixing, right? But to enforce that, important, set up user permission sets. Don't let everyone and anyone create property records. I feel usually when we are working on projects and we bring this up and we start setting it up, it's a given. Everyone's on board with it. It's just something that typically gets overlooked because it's not crucial in the beginning. You're figuring out your CRM, you're getting people on board, and everyone's figuring it out, and things are going quick. Before you know it, things have gotten a bit too messy. So ideally, from the beginning, set it up so that only a select few users can actually go in and create, modify new properties to help ensure that things stay structured, right? You don't want to have too many people going in. I'm sure in your work you've seen that plenty of times as you're doing these enablement sessions, etc. But I think that's a big one. There's more on data hygiene. Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, it's just like, I'm seeing that a ton. What you're referencing is like properties, just like the same similar names. I get asked like, oh, I see this, but I never populated this one. Like, that's not your property, that's somebody else's data. So making sure that even if you are like, when you are restricting it, but like also like maybe allowing it for somebody to, because people will have requests, look, I need this data, I need to collect this, I don't want to put notes, I will just put in a property. Maybe just use a simple HubSpot form that people can say like, oh, I will need this property, and they describe what, and then you as an admin decide what makes the most sense for the overall process.
Right. Yeah.
But when we're thinking about like the data standardization and everything, we're thinking about the data hygiene and like how to continue to have clean data. So like creating a simple dashboard, like we have one. If you're listening to this pod and you want to have like a screenshot how it looks, just let us know. But we have one that's like called data hygiene, and usually it's like just simple reports that you can just do like very quick. Like I would say total number of contacts with no first name, with no last name, total number of contacts with no owner. Maybe that's something that's very important for a business model, that every contact has an owner. Total number of companies that don't have an owner. So those are like just simple ones. I would say a couple of them that are pretty big when you're thinking about data model and everything is like contacts without unknown life cycle stage. And we talked a lot of like a couple of webinars that we hosted about how important a life cycle stage is for business, because
Mhm.
it at glance you see where they are at the journey. So when I see a contact without an unknown life cycle stage, I'm wondering like what has been missed. Is it a data model? Is it a integration? Is it how the contact has been imported or created?
Exactly.
Because I don't want to ever see those if it's not needed for a business model.
And
And then
if you don't have
yeah,
the views or the dashboards to follow that up, you usually only hear it when it's too late. Like if someone complains about it, hey, a contact, we missed it because there's no life cycle stage. Whereas if you have your data hygiene dashboard, and we typically call it that, indeed, right? Just the data hygiene dashboard, which shows exactly what you said, and usually more of a timeline graph. Like, hey, this week we had 3 more companies come in that don't have an owner. Okay, let's have a quick look. What caused that? What the issue there is? Just kind of helps you nip things in the bud a little quicker. So yeah, that's a standard one. I know also some CRMs have a lot of them now, more and more, have these pre-built-in tools and features and dashboards that are exactly used for that. Just, I guess the advice would just be to look at them and use them on a regular basis, because there is a lot there that you can use already. And I guess with that said, that transitions pretty nicely into chatting about some of the specific tools and features that you can use, right, to essentially help set up what we discussed, right, this larger contact management strategy. And again, maybe just to quickly wrap a bow around it. First and foremost, setting up your data model, right? How does your contact record actually live in your CRM, and how does it associate with other objects? That's important to understand where data should be living in the first place. Then you'll have the second and third pillar, which are all about then enforcing and standardizing the data that comes in. So protecting your properties, formatting, right? Automating them or preventing wrong data or wrongly formatted data to get into these properties and create a mess. Setting this up into your CRM in a structured way, property groups, naming conventions, right? So that's point 2, 3. And then the fourth one, the data hygiene, and sort of that's more of a continuous task, right? Set up a dashboard, identify what are some of these typical messy data indicators, like contacts with no owners, companies with no life cycle stage, whatever it may be, and follow that up on a weekly, monthly basis. That should be your go-to dashboard for just a quick check-in on a weekly, monthly basis, and see if and where any issues may have arisen. So if we have all 4 of those, digging into some tools, features, one that I want to kick things off with, just because it's one that I've been using more and more in recent weeks. I'm really liking it. It's HubSpot specific. I know there's other CRMs that have something similar, but it's this property insights feature. I believe it lives under the deduplication studio. I forget the name now, but where you go to manage your duplicate contacts and companies, you now have also this property insights feature, which I'm really liking, and it does, I guess, exactly what you would think it would do. Is it looks for and highlights potential property issues. It highlights if there is a potential duplicate. Say like, hey, there's one property here and one property here. It looks like they're collecting the same thing, but there's 2 of them. Have a look at it, merge them if needed. There's an auto merge feature, which is great. It also helps surface unused properties. Pretty easy one, but just, hey, whatever is not actively being filled out, help spot that, clean that up, get rid of it if you don't need it. And then lastly, which I think is pretty cool as well, it'll show anomalies. So if there's a certain increase, and hey, when it comes to the contact owners, it used to be divided this way, and now we've seen in the last week 90% went to this one person. What's up with that, right? And then you could just have a look at that. That is essentially a big part of your data hygiene dashboard that you want to check. So that first one, the property insights feature, I'm going to say it's underrated just because I think it's relatively new, and every time I'm discussing it with the client, they're not using it yet. So I haven't bumped into anyone yet saying like, oh yeah, we've used this. So yeah, that's one I would want to put on the radar first and foremost.
yeah. I think property insights. I didn't use it so much recently, but I think it's relatively new, as you said, and I think it's like just feeding off HubSpot being more and more into the like AI space, like using the AI browsing and searching through the
Yeah.
CRM and surfacing all the anomalies, like you mentioned, the duplicates, like fill rates, everything that it can based off the data that you have. And that's where
Right.
the data model starts that we started this pod with. But another one that I will surface is the MCP connectors with Claude and GPT, and would like to get a hand of as fast as possible when Gemini hits, because I just use it's very easy to connect with, like for example Claude. I use it a lot.
And
I use it for
just
a couple
quickly,
of
Stefan, just before that, so these MCP connectors, like what exactly does that allow you to do?
yeah. Sorry, so I was getting ahead of myself. So yeah, what it allows you to do is just like quickly fire up whatever AI tool are you using, like GPT or Claude, and then just allow it to connect to your CRM. In my
Mhm.
case, I connect it with HubSpot, and I can then read and pull any piece of information that I have in my CRM. So currently
Okay.
we cannot write. I think you can if you set it up your own, but that's another topic that maybe we'll handle. But like reading just data by chatting and not
Mhm.
needing to click a lot, and sometimes just bouncing ideas how something
Mhm.
can be set up differently, because like we are not saying that when you set up your data model and properties and fields and associations, that's set in stone. Like as your business evolves, as you're scaling, probably some things makes more sense to change. And that's when I think that just having access to an AI tool like Claude, and you can just ask it like, in the last 90 days, how many contacts have been created, and what are the most common field properties for those
Yeah.
contacts, and what are the job roles, and then just referencing that to let's say some kind of other tool that's syncing like your contacts, like let's say Apollo or any other tool, and just thinking about how you can change that to maybe have it more seamlessly. So, and then
Right.
bouncing off ideas for each of the teams, like marketing, like can what I do is like, can you tell me I'm like a marketing manager and I have this data that I pulled from my CRM, and can you let me know if there's something that I'm missing? Is that
Yeah.
something
Or
that I'm
spot trends.
overlooking?
Yeah.
Yeah, if this is something that I'm overlooking in the questions that I ask you, and it usually gives me a great idea like what we are not collecting, and maybe something
Mhm.
that we are collecting that we are not using. So for example, think
Yeah.
about, we have a pool of data, there's a ton of data, but like maybe there's a couple of fields that we should maybe add to, and you will know more about that, but like our marketing journeys. Maybe there's
Mhm.
a pretty good segment that we are not touching because we
Yeah.
don't even know that is in our CRM, because it's
Yeah.
maybe not something that everybody is focused on. And that's why I wanted to like just quickly highlight how good it is to have
Yeah.
that connection with AI
Yeah.
tools.
Yeah.
And what do you think, like
Yeah.
what
So
are
it's
the tools
basically,
that yeah.
yeah, no, I like that one. So basically talking to an AI agent that is deeply connected into your CRM and can help surface these things. So yeah, I think both for from a data hygiene perspective, that's great. But then also, like you mentioned, just helping you spot trends that is happening with contacts as they move through the funnel, and just having that as an interactive agent. I think that's great, and I think it's also the right way to use AI when it comes to these kind of contact management strategies. I wouldn't say the wrong way, but perhaps the other way that I've seen a lot happen, where there are some pitfalls, is really using the AI enrichments for everything, right? So HubSpot, other CRMs, other tools that you can plug into your CRM, they do a lot of that, right? Where we'll take the initial record, you have missing data, addresses, phone numbers, etc., and we'll fill that in. And now, especially with AI enrichment, these things go quite a bit further. They'll at times even label contacts a certain way depending on information that they've collected. This is a corporate, mid-level, senior, whatever it may be. And I think on the surface, that looks great. And it can actually be great as well if you have a pretty clean starting point. But this is one where I would put it in the somewhat overhyped category, just because essentially what you're doing is you're allowing an AI agent to guesstimate or well, guess, I guess, what the values for certain properties need to be. It's not an exact science. It's not first-party data. And so becoming overly reliant on that can lead you down some weird roads. And we've seen this where all of a sudden our reporting looks a little off, and then we dig into it. No, it turns out AI categorized all of, what was an example we had? AI had categorized a ton of contacts as being corporate contacts. Why? Because they used, in this case, it was Microsoft email addresses. And okay, at Microsoft, that's a corporate email. This is a corporate contact. Turns out these were folks either using their business email, but they were actually B2C contact, individual contacts. They were just using their work email, and there were other use cases. But again, the AI cleanup on the surface looked great. Hey, it took an initial contact, filled out a ton of properties, but then it kind of skewed our numbers a bit. And all of a sudden, we were looking at reports that just weren't right. Like, hey, we didn't reach this many B2B or B2C contacts. Those numbers are off, and it can take a while before you figure that out. So I would end with this in saying I use AI enrichment all the time, but the way I'd use it is setting it up on the side to support the actual source of truth property. So having, again, property group, AI enriched or AI suggested categories, whatever AI thinks this contact is or should be, and labels that they should carry. And then you could set up automations or things you want on individual property levels to say, okay, in this case, take whatever AI says and copy it over. In this case, if AI suggests something different than what I have, put it into a list or send a notification so we can manually review whatever it may be. But guard against simply plugging in AI enrichment across the board, because it can create a big mess, and we've seen that, and it can take quite a while to clean that up. So I think that's it.
Yeah, so what I'm hearing is use it, try it, test it, but make sure you have a good strategy about like what data are you trusting, because at the end of the day, AI will get better and better. It will get more powerful. It will get more, I don't know, it will have more precision, but don't just rely on let's hit a button, let's see what did we get and then work from that, because usually,
which is tempting, right? Because that's typically what they sell, which is, hey, it's one click of a button and your CRM is completely clean, which is how it's going to look. But is it? Not always.
That's like, let's auto clean your data. Okay, like who knows, when I'm hearing that, like that's very good for me. Like somebody is cleaning, something is cleaning my data in the background. Like, but do you already know as much as I know about the data we are collecting?
Yeah.
And how we want to collect it and how we need to have it cleaned. So then, okay, let's use it, but let's use it on a sample and maybe somehow train it down the line the correct way, and then have it fully automated so we can we can trust it.
Exactly. And I think that's a general AI rule, right? The typical thing of if you go into ChatGPT and just ask it, write me a report on the history of X. All right, it's going to be a very generic, clearly AI output that everyone who reads a couple paragraphs and go, all right, ChatGPT, obviously. The same happens if you just plug in enrichment into your CRM. You're gonna have a very clean, nice looking CRM, but then you dig into it and you think, all right, this doesn't really make sense. This is an AI CRM. Okay, nice, kind of, but it's not super user friendly. So the same way you would need to have much more advanced prompts when you're asking ChatGPT to put a specific report together. You'd apply the same way of working with it, and when it's enriching your data, which is, okay, don't just go in and enrich everything. Let me go one by one and tell you where I need you to fill in certain values based on X, Y, Z. Yeah. So I think it's a good one to close off on, just to call some attention to it, because I think it's one that we see quite often, and it is a bit of a pitfall. But like you said, we do still want to use it. So yeah, I think with that said, we've covered a lot in terms of like the key components and what goes into a contact marketing strategy, and what some of these tools are that we recommend or not recommend, or recommend you be careful with when using them. Shall we move to close us off? Stjepan, beer review of the week. What have you got in store
Yeah,
for us?
let's do it. Let's do it. So I'm picking Murphy.
Okay,
I have a
Murphy's.
story to it. So I love Guinness. I think most of people like know what a Guinness is. And wherever you can, when you're traveling, you want to try Guinness, especially if you're like in Ireland. So my story is I went to visit my brother, like when he was working there, and I drink Guinness, but then they offered me Murphy. That was Cork, city of Cork, and I now love Murphy more than Guinness. So why? Because
No.
it's for me more smoother, creamier. It's not so smoky, and it has a little less ABV, like 4%, so I can enjoy it more. And then it has a long history, I think from 1850 or something. And whenever I'm in Ireland, I usually just like when they sell it, where they sell it, I usually prefer Murphy's. And whenever
Is it a
somebody's
close
travel, yeah,
is it a close competition between? I've never been to Ireland, so I might be completely
it's not.
looking out of
I
my.
think it's not a close competition. I know Heineken is an owner of Murphy Brewery,
Yeah.
and it's usually not mass sold as Guinness across the Ireland. Maybe I think maybe in some specific cities,
Sure.
but like in Cork, I know every bar has a tap with Murphy and Guinness. I don't know,
Oh, they have to.
I didn't see that when I was in Dublin. I only saw Guinness in a lot of bars, and I just love the taste, and it's pretty good also from cans. So if somebody's traveling to Ireland and if they ask to bring a beer, try Murphy. I think you will love it. Usually I ask when I know somebody's traveling there, I ask them to bring me Murphy, and they're like shocked, like why not Guinness? Like I can get Guinness here, and
Sure. Fair enough.
but Murphy is something that I love. So what's your beer recommendation?
No, that sounds good. Okay, so mine for the week, it's the Delirium beer, if you know it. It's the one with the pink elephant. It's become a bit iconic. It's a Belgian beer, Belgian strong ale, very heavy beer as well. Well, relatively speaking, but it's a heavy beer. It's known for the pink elephant emblem, which is quite famous. It won best beer in the world a few times as well. A lot of Belgian beers have. They do a pretty good job. I think the funniest thing about it, so two things, right? One is there's the Delirium Cafe in Brussels. I've gone to several times. I don't know if you've been. For a long time, they were the bar with the most beers on the menu. I'm pretty sure they've been passed in the meantime, but they had 2,000 plus beers on the menu. I think a couple of bars popped up that had more, but until the early 2000s, they were the Guinness World Record holder. So there's that, and then I guess just a fun fact on the name. So Delirium, I only found this out recently. I guess I always just thought Delirium is a beer, but it's actually named after the what's it? Delirium tremens. Tremens. It's a condition. It's an alcohol withdrawal condition where when you go through these withdrawals, you'll start hallucinating. That's kind of what the pink elephant refers to. So it's a little bit of dark humor there, where it's a strong beer named after alcohol withdrawal, but it's a good one. It's a really good one. It's one of the best beers in the world, in my opinion. And there's the bar with the same name, which is just a fun. It's located in the center of Brussels. It's a very nice location, so it's a must stop really. Every time you go in there, just have a look. The menu's insane. It's like a book, right? So there's 2,000 beers in there. Would I recommend taking a Delirium there? Maybe one. But if you're there, I would go for one of the crazy ones because they have, banana beers, whatever. The craziest thing you can think of, they'll have it there. So it's a place to experiment. So yeah, that's the one. Have you tried it?
Yeah, I had delirium, but I never went to Brussels or the bars. So you just like added that to the map when I do travel, and hopefully I will do because it's very close to me. So
do that. They opened up a delirium tequila bar next door as well, which has been like hundreds of tequilas. Anyway, that's another story, but it's a fun one. Cool. All right. Cool. I think we covered a lot. It was interesting to chat through this. Any closing words, Stjepan?
No, I think we are preparing a new episode. Let us know what you think about this one or the first and the second that we did. If there are any topics you want us to cover, reach us on LinkedIn, or you can reach us, I don't know, on the pod or comment. And we will happy to chat and maybe include some of the topics in our next episodes. And I try the beers or share your beer reviews with us. We are happy to try them if they're fun. And anything from you, Martin, before we close it?
I'd say even if they're not fun, we'll probably try them. So
that's what I was
reach
thinking.
out and we'll take it from there. See you guys.
Okay. See you guys. Bye bye.